Good afternoon, everyone. We'll give a couple more minutes if there's anybody from the public that are going to attend. Okay, I think we'll get started now. Good afternoon. My name is Nick Pierce. I'm a manager in the Permit Services Division of the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District. To my left here in a few seconds is John Yoshimura, one of our senior air quality engineers. He's going to be helping with the rule development process. Today, we are holding a public workshop to present a draft version of a federally mandated non-attainment fee rule for the 1997 8-hour ozone standard. This meeting is being held via video teleconference in all three regional offices and via Zoom, and is also being recorded. We will do our best to facilitate a smooth meeting, but please bear with us in case we run into any technical difficulties. Before we begin, I want to review some general information and instructions for the meeting. Please silence your communication devices, such as your mobile or desk phone. This will ensure that we don't get any interference that could interrupt the meeting. There will be an opportunity for public comments at the end of the presentation. However, if you do have any questions or comments at any point during the presentation, please make yourself known and we will try to get to you. Before you make your comment, we ask that you please state your name and affiliation. For those attending in person, please approach the podium to make your comment. Also, we have a sign-in sheet at the table adjacent to the room, and we would ask that you sign in as well. For members of the public that are participating via the Zoom application, please press the raise hand button so that you may be recognized to speak. For those participating via teleconference, please press *9 to raise your hand and be recognized to speak. Staff will call the last 4 digits of your phone number when it is your turn to speak. Please be sure to press *6 to unmute or mute yourself. You may also send questions or comments via email to webcast@valleyair.org. We will be monitoring that email inbox and we'll respond to any questions we receive from that. Okay, with that said, we'll start the presentation. The San Joaquin Valley faces significant challenge in meeting federal air quality standards due to unique topography and meteorology, which work together to trap air pollution, as shown in the satellite image. The San Joaquin Valley Air Basin is a few hundred miles long, about 50 miles wide, and is shaped like a bowl. We have strong temperature inversions and long periods of stagnation in the atmosphere. The valley also faces a variety of other challenges, including major transportation corridors, I-5 and Highway 99 that run along the valley. We have high population growth, as well as wildfires and pollution transport from other areas. All of this creates conditions that require substantially greater emission reductions in the valley in order to meet clean air targets. San Joaquin Valley has many types of emission sources, all of which create to our air quality challenges. Over the years, the district has developed and implemented numerous strategies to meet federal standards through our attainment plans and incentive programs, which have resulted in significant emission reductions from all of these sources. As mentioned in the previous slide, the district has adopted and implemented numerous clean air measures to reduce emissions under its regulatory authority. Collectively, our stationary source control strategies have reduced ozone-forming NOx emissions by over 90%. We have also deployed innovative measures to reduce emissions from mobile and indirect sources, which are outside of our authority. And the California Air Resources Board has also adopted numerous mobile source emission control strategies. As a result of these significant clean air efforts by the district and the California Air Resources Board, the San Joaquin Valley continues to make major improvements in air quality. So the purpose of this workshop is to develop a rule to satisfy Clean Air Act requirements that would become effective should the district fail to attain the 1997 8-hour ozone standard, which has been revoked by the EPA. The Valley is currently classified as extreme non-attainment of the now revoked 1997 8-hour standard. Even though this standard is revoked, the district is still required to develop and implement measures to attain this standard. The district's 2007 ozone plan outlined strategies for attainment of the 1997 8-hour standard by the June 2024 attainment date. As a result of significant emission reductions from numerous clean air measures adopted by the district and also by the California Air Resources Board, the Valley is in fact on the verge of attaining the 1997 8-hour ozone standard. The district and CARB are currently conducting initial analysis, including exceptional event documentation, in support of an upcoming clean data finding submittal to EPA for action as provided under the Clean Air Act. It is important to note that the proposed rule will not take effect if we are able to attain the 1997 8-hour standard. So, what is a federally mandated ozone non-attainment fee? Well, Section 185 of the Clean Air Act requires that areas designated as severe or extreme non-attainment must adopt rules to assess a penalty fee in the event that an area does not demonstrate attainment with an ozone standard by the applicable attainment date. This requirement applies to major sources of NOx and VOC emissions in severe or extreme non-attainment areas. Affected sources are required to pay these fees on an annual basis until the area reaches attainment of the ozone standard or until EPA terminates the anti-backsliding requirements associated with the Section 185 penalty for the revoked standard. The Clean Air Act and EPA guidance allow for alternate fee programs to satisfy Section 185 requirements for revoked standards. An alternate fee program allows more flexibility in meeting Clean Air Act requirements than a direct implementation of Section 185 requirements. The San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District will adopt rules to implement the required Clean Air Act Section 185 fees for each ozone standard. We adopted Rule 3170 to implement the Section 185 fees for the 1979 1-hour ozone standard, and we have been requiring fees since 2011. San Joaquin Valley Air Basin was the first extreme area in the nation to attain this standard. We have submitted the required maintenance plan to EPA along with a request to terminate the Section 185 non-attainment fees associated with the 1979 1-hour ozone standard, and we're just waiting for EPA's action on that. We are now proposing to adopt Rule 3171 to implement the Section 185 fees for the 1997 8-hour ozone standard, which is the subject of today's workshop. In the future, we will adopt rules to implement Section 185 fees for other ozone standards as well. The fees required by Clean Air Act Section 185 are determined as follows. First, you establish a default baseline period, which is the attainment year of that particular ozone standard. The 185 fees are then based on the VOC and NOx emitted in excess of 80% of the baseline emissions, which are the stationary source emissions during that baseline year. Per Section 185, the annual fee rate is $5,000 per ton of emissions, or $5,000 per ton of pollutant in $1990, and this fee rate is adjusted annually for inflation as specified in the Clean Air Act. For example, EPA's 2022 Section 185 fee rate was $11,122 per ton. The proposed Rule 3171 will implement the required federally mandated non-attainment fees for the 1997 8-hour ozone standard. Since this is a revoked standard, Rule 3171 will implement an alternate fee program similar to that currently implemented in District Rule 3170. The alternative fee program attempts to impose an equitable distribution of responsibility for ozone non-attainment between stationary sources and mobile sources. It does so by recognizing stationary source emission units that are well controlled and assesses fees from any major stationary source that has equipment that does not meet the definition of clean emissions unit, which means that it does not meet or exceed achieved in practice best available control technology requirements as specified in the rule. The remaining balance of required Section 185 fees will be made up by fees collected from motor vehicles registered in the San Joaquin Valley Air Basin, as provided by Assembly Bill 2522, which was created for the purpose of meeting Section 185 requirements. The collected Section 185 fees are used in district grant programs to fund surplus emission reductions so we can get into attainment as expeditiously as possible. As I said before, it is important to note that Rule 3171 will not take effect if we are able to attain the 1997 8-hour ozone standard. As mentioned earlier, the default baseline period for Section 185 fees is the attainment year for the ozone standard. However, as allowed by the Clean Air Act and EPA guidance, an alternate baseline period may be established if the district determines it is more representative of normal source operations. Therefore, Rule 3171 will include the option for a major source to use an alternate baseline period. Each major source must request and provide detailed justification for their proposed use of an alternate baseline period. Each major source must also submit annual statements of actual NOx and VOC emissions. Rule 3171 will have an annual tracking and reporting requirements, as well as backstop provisions in the event of a fee collection shortfall. The annual report will include NOx and VOC emissions from all major sources, the total fees required under a direct implementation of Section 185, the total fees collected from stationary sources, the total motor vehicle fees collected, as well as a demonstration of the combination of fees from Rule 3171 and motor vehicle fees that show that they meet or exceed the fees that would be required under a direct implementation of Section 185 of the Clean Air Act. In the event that a shortfall in collected fees occurs, Rule 3170 will collect additional fees from major sources on an emissions-weighted basis. So the next steps for Rule 3171 are addressed on this slide. We will be accepting comments on the proposed rule through July 11th. We will review the comments and make any necessary changes to the rule and prepare a proposed rule package for public noticing in July. And our plan is to bring the proposed rule package to our governing board for adoption in August. If you wish to submit any comments on the proposed Rule 3171, please send them to Jonathan Yoshimura using the contact information on this slide. This concludes our presentation, and we'll be happy to take any questions or comments you may have. Do we have any questions in the southern region?
No members of the public in the south.
Okay, do we have any questions from the central region?
No questions or comments in the central.
Okay, there are no members of the public in the north. Do we have any questions via Zoom?
There are no hands currently raised on Zoom.
Are there any questions via teleconference?
No, there's no comments at the webcast@valleyair.org email.
Okay. All right. Well, that concludes our presentation.